Hi, we're Alan and Crystal, and we live in Bangkok, Thailand.
Today we want to talk a little bit about why we went to the US to get vaccinated.
So, going back to about, I think it was about mid-May, what we decided to do is actually fly to the US and get vaccinated with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We got back on May 24th and went into quarantine until June 8th. So, why did we decide to fly to the US to get vaccinated? Well, if you're familiar at all with the situation here in Thailand, what you'll know is that the vaccine rollout is actually going very slowly, and there's a lot of questions as to whether foreigners can actually get vaccinated anytime soon or not. We were looking at the COVID numbers in Bangkok, and for a while they were actually increasing quite a bit. Now they've leveled out. They're typically in the 800 to 1,000, 1,100 cases per day here in Bangkok. We were looking down the line and realizing that we wouldn't be able to do much without being vaccinated. So it's been a little bit pricey. We'll actually go over the details. Thankfully, we have credit cards because that's where a lot of the cost for this went. So maybe Crystal can talk a little bit about exactly what we ran into cost-wise. So if anybody's thinking of doing it, then they have a little bit of an idea what they're going to run up against.
Before I start talking about the costs, I think I want to bring up the point that we are Canadian, and there is some question, and I'm sure there will be more questions as to why we went to the US rather than going to Canada to get our vaccines. So in Canada, they have a mandatory quarantine period of 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a hotel, and then the remaining part of that 2 weeks in your home. Well, we don't have a home, so quarantining in Canada would have been difficult to do outside of a hotel, was part of the reason. The other part was Canada does not, or at the time that we were investigating it, was not offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We wanted the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because it is a single dose, so we could do a quicker turnaround. So those two factors played into our decision to start investigating whether we could go to the US. The US in California specifically was where we chose to fly into, and they were offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and no mandatory quarantine period. We ended up staying with friends who were fully vaccinated and had no issues with us coming and staying with them.
Yeah, so that gives a pretty good rundown of exactly why we decided to do it. Fortunately, once we landed, I think it was on Friday afternoon, the next morning we got vaccinated with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, so one shot and done. If we were going to change anything about our trip, we were a little bit worried about whether we would be able to get our COVID test coming back to Thailand, get it all done right away, and do some of the other organization. But actually, it turned out that we were able to get a vaccine turnaround really quickly down where we were at, just south of San Francisco. So we probably could have shaved a few days off the trip. It would have saved a little bit more money, but we were visiting friends too, so it turned into a little bit of a holiday. But I think that if you're going to do it and just do a kind of a quick turnaround, what we'll do is we'll go over the costs, so it gives you a rough idea. Now, this is going to be in Canadian dollars. We'll put a conversion on screen for anybody who's interested in doing that. But we'll give you an idea what our flight costs were. We won't worry about food and that type of thing because, that's really going to depend on you. So,
our flight costs return for the two of us was $2,114 Canadian. We needed insurance in order to get back into Thailand, and that's COVID insurance. That cost us $200 Canadian for the two of us. Our ASQ, alternative state quarantine, the mandatory quarantine here in Bangkok, for the two of us cost us $2,103 Canadian.
Now that actually is one thing that it wasn't too long before we left. I think it was a couple of weeks?
Beginning of May.
Beginning of May.
It.
It had been for anyone coming back who was fully vaccinated, you would be able to only have a 1 week stay in ASQ. So that was unfortunately something that changed about the time we were thinking of doing this.
The COVID test here in Bangkok before we left, because you do need a negative COVID test in order to fly anywhere in the world right now, was $202 Canadian for the two of us. Our COVID test in the United States cost us $546 Canadian for the two of us. Those were our main costs associated. We also needed a certificate of entry from the embassy that is free of charge. And of course, we got the vaccine, which in the US is free of charge. We did have a few other additional costs that we have included. The cost of our Grab from our condo here in Bangkok to the airport, because we live pretty much on the complete opposite side of the city from the airport. So we actually took a Grab to a hotel right beside the airport the day before we flew out, and that cost us $13.95 Canadian. And then we had a hotel near the airport, because our flight was at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be at the airport for 4, or right around 4 o'clock. We left the hotel at 4 o'clock. If we had left from our condo, we would have had to leave here by about 3. And that cost us $33.64 Canadian for that hotel room.
Yeah, and one thing actually about traveling right now, there's so few people in the airports that actually we were way too early. But at the same time, we kind of like to be early just in case there's any hiccups along the way. We weren't traveling with much luggage anyways. We were just doing carry-on, so we weren't carrying anything that would be a problem, like any sharp items, or anything like that. So basically, going through the airport was a really simple process. It was super quick. There's almost nobody in the airports, especially at that time, because we were there at probably about 4:15 by the time we arrived. So we had lots of time to wait for the flight, and the flight wasn't even that busy. So
the other costs that we included in our calculation was our hotel in San Francisco the night before we flew out. Again, we flew out in the morning, so we chose to go up to San Francisco the day before our flight. My friend had no problem giving us a ride up to to our hotel in San Francisco. That room cost us $107.24 Canadian. And then they had a shuttle from the hotel to the airport that they were charging for because of COVID. And it would cost us $26.61 Canadian as well.
So overall, we were looking at about $53.47 in terms of costs overall to make that trip. Now I think that that's probably about as low as you'd go, and that's really not too bad for 2 people. Now a little bit more on the rationale for why we decided to do it. We came to Bangkok and we're kind of excited to be able to go out and do a lot of things, and unfortunately I've only been here since I've been out of my first quarantine since the beginning of March. So I was able to go out and do some stuff for about a month, almost a month and a half before all of the lockdown started. Crystal's been here for a little longer. She started working here prior to me arriving. So we decided that by getting the vaccine, it would allow us to do a lot more, feel a lot more comfortable going out, and going and eating out in the limited way that you can in Bangkok right now, but also to be able to travel around the country and not be too worried. I think it's something that, we kind of debated because, $5,300 is quite a bit of money. And so what we decided is that, well, if we would have gotten COVID, would we have regretted, not going and getting the vaccine? So we kind of thought about it from that perspective that, sure, we might have liked to have held on to that money, But at the same time, if one or both of us got sick, because I mean we both live together, so if we got sick and one or both of us died, then how would that $5,300 look to us at that point? If one of the things that we've heard about here is that if you test positive for COVID in Thailand, basically you end up having to go to either a field hospital or a hospital, depending on what kind of space is available. Which 2 weeks in the quarantine at the hotel here was not ideal, but at the same time, I can only imagine what a pain in the butt it would be to be in a field hospital for a couple of weeks.
Exactly.
So another question that people might have is the whole idea of vaccine tourism, which is essentially what we did. Now, we would have preferred to have gone to our home country of Canada, but for a variety of reasons that we've discussed, it just really wasn't a practical thing to do. So we did a lot of research and found that we would be able to travel to the U.S. without any difficulty. We're kind of hesitant at first, but decided that it would totally be worthwhile. So once we decided to do that, got a couple questions about how much it would cost and everything for the U.S. Well, I started to analyze the numbers a little bit, and I think it was the cost to the U.S. directly would be $10 per dose. Plus they pay pharmacies $40 per dose to administer the vaccine. The total cost for us to get vaccinated in the U.S. was $100. Now, there are some plans in the U.S. I think in Alaska they're talking about actually vaccinating foreign travelers for free. You could basically fly into the Alaska airport, get vaccinated, and I don't know if you could go on your way, or maybe they're just trying to encourage people to stay there. So, in terms of looking at the costs that we incurred to actually fly to the U.S., well, we set it up with United Airlines. Booked through booking.com, so we spent $2,100 booking our flights through American companies. Then while we were there, we spent $500 with an American lab, plus we were out touring around the California countryside and eating out and doing a little bit of shopping while we were there. So overall, the vaccine tourism for the U.S. it's a net benefit. We were perfectly willing to pay. I think we probably would have considered paying up to $100 U.S. For each of us. So spending $200 to get vaccinated, I wouldn't have had a problem doing that. So. I know that some people might, kind of look disparagingly on doing that kind of thing, but I guess it depends on how you look at it. We felt it was worthwhile doing that, and we're thankful to be able to have gone to the U.S. And take advantage of that opportunity. I really wish that it's something that everybody would be able to do to be able to get vaccinated. Now, is it something that you should do? Now, that there's some question about, would you be able to get back into Thailand depending, I guess that depends on what your visa is. We have, Crystal has a work permit here, so, and a multi-entry visa, so essentially we'd be able to go in and out without any difficulty. The only difficulty is we got to come back and do the quarantine, which, with the rules these days, with not being able to leave the hotel even with negative COVID tests, it's a pain in the butt. But we were prepared to do that just because we'd come back vaccinated. So would it be worth it for you to do that? That's something that only you can answer. You've got a little bit of an idea what the costs are. You're not going to save a whole lot of money on your ASQ. I think, because we paid, I think, 53,000 baht for our ASQ, and I think it would have been 33. Wasn't it 33?
For one person?
For one person?
Approximately.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe
you might
about
be able
60.
to find it a little bit cheaper than 33.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a few places as low as about 28,000 baht, but...
So you might be looking at about 60% of the cost of what we paid. So I mean, conceivably, a single person could probably do it for maybe, in around the $3,000 range. So, is that worth it to you to get vaccinated ahead of time? We were worried that that we wouldn't be able to get back into the country, but it was a risk we decided to take, and fortunately, it's paid off. And as for like I say, your situation, your mileage may vary.
And really, going through the airports right now, we have had no issues. We've flown into Bangkok now twice during the COVID situation, and it has gone super smooth. There is a list available on the embassy websites indicating all the documentation you need. Just make sure you have it printed out. We did observe somebody having issues in an airport because they didn't have their documents printed out. They only had them electronically. But basically, you just walk up and hand your stack of documents over. They have a look at them. As long as they're all in line with what's required, it's a 5-minute extra step of them reviewing your documents.
And wasn't there that one guy who didn't even have his ASQ book?
Yeah.
So
we did observe one person booking their ASQ in the airport because they didn't have their ASQ booked prior to getting to the gate. So.
Well, and one of the things that we had our insurance to come back to Thailand actually lined up before we even left. We had the COE, the Certificate of Entry process, already underway before we even left. Was that approved while we were before we left?
No, it got approved after we were in California because we needed. We were waiting on a document. I believe it was the confirmation for our ASQ. We were waiting for. Which we received after we arrived in San Francisco, and I had to upload that to get our COE approved.
And now we're filming this. We've been out of quarantine for about a week now, so we're filming this in the middle of June. The rules regarding COVID travel and all of that change seemingly day to day in Thailand. So one of the things you might want to do is just make sure that, if you're thinking of doing something like this, that the rules haven't changed. This is basically just our experience. Take from it what you will. It's not, I wouldn't consider it advice. We're just kind of relaying what our experience has been. Overall, I would say, it was a pretty positive experience, and we're really happy that we did it. We're feeling a lot less stress now. Being vaccinated, yesterday we went out, the other day we went to Chinatown, yesterday we went to the Chatuchak market, we went to a mall, and really looking around now, it's a lot of people seem to be acting almost as if nothing happened. They're still wearing masks and everything, but in restaurants, there's a lot of people in the restaurants. I was actually kind of shocked to see how many people were in them. So we're feeling pretty good about our decision. I think with things opening up in Bangkok, it's nice to see, but at the same time, the numbers just haven't broken lower, and I think that we're probably going to see another wave of COVID coming up. Probably, I'd be willing to bet they're going to have more severe closures by the end of July. We'll see. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully, the vaccinations can really pick up pace, and the precautions that are in place will be enough. Hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed about that. So yeah. So if you guys have any questions at all, if there's something that we haven't covered, or you're interested in more details on it, just ask us some questions. And we're definitely willing to to tell you what we know and share a little bit more about our experience that way.
Which companies we use for our COVID tests or our insurance, we'd be happy to share that in private messages.
Yeah, so as they say on YouTube, like and subscribe. And we're going to be coming out with more videos about what we're up to in Thailand. We've got a little bit of stuff that we've been doing on our Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We've been sharing a little bit about what we've been up to, and we're hoping to do more videos here coming up as we get more comfortable, because this is our first official video. I know we've filmed some other stuff, kind of like practice videos that we'll probably put up. So I'm sure that they're going to get better as we get more comfortable in front of the camera. So thank you very much, and talk to you again soon.
Thank you.